Welcome to the AI argument.
Hello and welcome to the AI argument with that theme tune. Frank, that's amazing. Woohoo! I feel like I'm on the news. I have to brush my glasses up like this and sort of make a serious face.
Oh yeah, I should have got some sheets of paper to do that thing where you ruffle the sheets of paper.
Here, right here.
Oh, perfect. Yes. I'll have my sheets of paper for next week.
Oh, brilliant. What did you use to make that?
Suno, of course, and 11 Labs to get a voice to say welcome to the AI argument. And I have another little piece of music for the outro, and we'll see what people make of it. As you can tell from the intro bit, I was definitely going for that kind of like dramatic news vibe. But yes, I was trying to infuse it with a little bit of Curb Your Enthusiasm because I think we give off that vibe as well.
What was the name of? Did you remember Brass Eye years ago?
Yeah,
that was great. It has this Vass Eye vibe to it, and that would make us. What was the political? Your man was called, Damien O'Halloran. I changed my name to be Damien O'Halloran or something like that. Whatever his name was. Brilliant. I love it.
Wasn't that where Alan Partridge started as well? Was that Brass Eye?
Yes. It was. Yeah, it was very funny, and it got taken off air for reasons that I'm not going to discuss now. But it was very funny. Go watch them. They're on YouTube. They're brilliant. If anybody who knows what Brass Eye was taken off air for, will know that there was a brilliant line in it that I live my life vicariously through films and old TV shows now. Right, that's basically what I do. And so the line in it, that was the last thing we wanted to happen. In the context of actually, anyway, I'm not even going to talk about it. It was a horrible joke. It was really funny, and the show got cancelled about 5 days later. They went too far.
Well, after my last experience of encouraging you to tell a joke that you said you shouldn't,
I know.
I'm not going to encourage you to tell this one.
Zero filter here, Listen, welcome to the AI argument. Today we are coming to you live from the downtown Tremor studios. So I've moved into my new house, which has been very exciting. I am roasting, it's boiling. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about O3. I've been using O3 in some of the sort of just day-to-day stuff in the house move. And I am loving O3. It is amazing how good it is, right? So I'm going to give you a couple of practical examples of things that I've been doing, and I've been watching it work, and it's just been blowing me away, right? So the first thing was I bought a couch. It's a nice couch. It's a big couch. And it's got like a wireless charger on it and a USB things and whatever, right? And it comes in sections. So you can take the couch apart and then you can put it back together and sort of whatever, make it fit your room, So it turned out that I needed an extender cable to bring the power from one part of the couch to the other part of the couch. And I just looked at it, I don't even know what sort of cable it is. It's kind of a weird two-prong thing. So I just took a photo of it and gave it to O3 and said, hey, O3, I need this cable is for my couch. I need an extender cable. What is it and where do I get it? And just to watch it, right? So it did this thing with the picture where it writes Python code to like crop it, enlarge it, rotate it, and do everything. And eventually it comes back and says, yes, this is your standard. I can see in the chain of thought now, not to me. It comes back and says, yes, this is your standard flat. One pin is flat, the other pin is round. This is the type of connector, and it just gives me a link straight to where I can buy it from. Unbelievable, right? The old house I was in had this sort of, it was kind of cold, the old house, right? So I'd put in this funky Drayton wireless heating system where you could turn on the heat in one room but not in another, sort of stuff, control it from your phone. And it was a rented house, so I needed to get rid of that old heating system and put in just a regular Joe Bloggs heating system. And it was a standard backplate. So I'm sitting outside Screwfit and I'm chatting to O3 saying, here, look, at the old heating system is controlled with this. I don't want to get an electrician. I just want to take off the unit and leave the backplate there and clip on a new one. What do I need? And it goes off and it does the research, reads all the manuals, and it says, yes, I can see that backplate. And it gives me some suggestions. And I'm on the Screwfit website and going, yeah, they're all out of stock. How about this model? And it comes back and it's saying, no, the dimensions aren't quite the same between the backplate and that one. That one's not going to work. And over and back. And eventually I said, how about this one that I can get on Amazon? It goes, it reads the manuals again, comes back and says, and I love the way it talks to you, right? It's like, yes, Justin, it's a 5-minute job and you'll be done. And it starts joking with me, basically saying, yeah, it's great. I love it. It's a brilliant model. So it is.
Yeah, it is actually. I think it might have been just on last week's episode that you said that it works really well as a kind of a almost like a light version of deep research, and I've been using it that way because we get like, well, we'll talk in a minute about the limits being increased, but we up until now we've had like 10 deep research uses a month, which is not very much. And so in order to preserve them, I've been using O3 that way, just as you said, and it's really good, really, really good.
Yeah, yeah. And they've increased the limits in O3, and they've increased the limits for deep research this week, which has made me start using O3 all the time because I don't have the fear anymore that I'm going to run out of requests.
The O3, the O3 limits they're great. What have they given us now? It's like they're pretty healthy compared to what they were. So we've got 100 messages a week now for O3 and 300 a day for O4 mini. I mean, those are pretty generous. I'm happy about those. What I'm not so happy about is the deep research stuff and the lack of clarity around it. So I was delighted because I logged in, I think it was just yesterday even, I logged in and I saw that instead of having like 7 or 8 deep research searches left, it had jumped up to like 15 or more, I can't remember. And I thought, oh, this is cool. They're giving me more searches. And I did a Google, and sure enough, there was an announcement. We're giving people more deep research usage. So if I remember correctly, now we have 25 a month now is the new limit. However, it's very confusing because I don't think we're getting an extra. We had 10. But I don't think we're getting 15 extra uses of deep research as we know it, because deep research as we know it runs on O3. But they've got this new deep research lite, which runs on O4 mini, and it doesn't give you the same level of report. And they're saying it will search as deeply, but the report isn't as in depth. And I think what they've done is when you run out of your 10 O3 deep research uses, you get 15 O4 mini uses. So it's very confusing. It's not very transparent. And when they say that we've given you additional usage, they haven't really. They've kind of just added another tool
to it. I guess they have. Now, I will say, okay, I hear you right. I love O3 and I love it. O4 mini is... Okay, first question is this. Do you think when they're giving you the shorter response, do you think maybe that they're responding to some feedback? Because I do think that sometimes the deep research response is just too much. Like, you don't need to have, a 10-page report. I just want to have a 1-page executive summary.
Yeah, but my concern is that for people who are using the O3 for longer reports. So, for example, you can't, even though they've got this new light version of deep research, you can't choose, certainly not in my interface yet anyway, unless it's like a slow rollout or something, but I don't think so. You can't choose to actually use the light version to save your O3 versions. Are you with me?
Yes.
So it's just like when your O3 ones run out, you get switched over to O4 mini.
Yeah.
And so for someone who's like running the reports for clients, or, for someone who needs those longer reports, it becomes a lot less transparent of like, oh, hang on, how many have I left? What have I got? Am I switching over to O4 mini now? So that's why I'm not crazy about it. I think it's great to have a light version. I think it's great to have one that doesn't necessarily give you a ream of reports. You may not need it, but I just think it should be been added as a new tool that we could like choose, or at least that there would be it would be separated from the number of O3 deep research uses we had.
Yeah. Can I just actually point out, I totally agree with you, right? An interesting thing came out this week. So with O3, right, the version of O3 that was released just in the last week or two was not exactly the same version of O3 that was released, or that they demoed back at Christmas time during the 7 days of Xmas, right? So the people who do the ARC-AGI test, right, that thing where it's supposed to be easy for people but hard for AIs, they redid their test. And again, O3 just kicks it out of the park, right? It got 57%. 80%, I think, is human. It got 57%, which wasn't quite as good as the one that they released at Christmas. But at Christmas time, now remember, we are only in April, right? So we're talking about 4 months later. So they had said, oh, we got 80% in whatever the ARC-AGI prize. And everybody went, yeah, you did. but the cost was enormous. He spent over $10,000 per task, and I think they spent, was it 3 million quid or something, or a couple of 100,000? It was like an enormous amount of money just to get the 80%. And for that reason, it didn't qualify as a result. But the O3 that we are using that scored 57%, that was $1.50 a task, not $10,000. That's mind-blowing. That's just incredible. So for a model that literally, the more I use it, the more I'm falling in love with it, just because of the quality of the answers, the price that you're getting, and this whole thing of distillation. So O4 Mini is a distilled version of O3. It just gives me such joy about the future, about where we're heading to. And it makes me feel mystical and blurry-eyed. And it brings me nicely on to, it brings me nicely on to Sam Altman telling us that we should say please and thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I find this is hilarious. So last week, when we were preparing for last week's show, yes, you brought my attention to a tweet from Sam Altman. And we both kind of looked at it, and there was so much going on. We just said, that's amusing, it's funny, but you know what? We've got so much to deal with. It's not a big enough deal to cover in the show, and we left it out. And then over the following 7 days,
what did he say? So what was the question? And what did he say?
My feed blew up with it. It's all over the papers, and it was this. Somebody said, "How much energy is being wasted by us saying please and thank you to ChatGPT?" And Sam Altman came back and said, I'll get the exact quote. He said, "Tens of millions of dollars well spent. You never know." Social media and the press have gone nuts with it. And I've seen things like, I've seen headlines like, "Being polite to AI is costing tens of millions," Sam Altman says in a statement. Sam Altman says in a statement. Sam Altman says in a joke.
But do you know what I like about this is, say what you like about Sam Altman, but at least it shows he's human. He's still able to, he's developing the most consequential technology the human race has ever seen. He's got this incredible company, and this was a randomer on the internet that asked him this question, and he's still able to respond in good humor. I think that makes his stock has gone up a bit in my eyes.
Oh, see, this causes his stock to continue to plummet for me, because I'm still of the view that in his position, he should be treating what he's doing with a little bit more gravitas than veiled jokey tweets about being polite to AI in case it rises up against us in the future. The inference being that if you're polite to AI, they might save you because you were nice to them.
Look, if he said millions spent or millions well spent, say please or thank you or else, right? A sort of a threatening, jokey way, then I kind of agree with you. But it was just a little joke. It's okay for people in power to joke.
But I think what he should have said was, what he should have said was, "You know what, dear Twitter user, you are absolutely correct. We have been really opaque about the energy costs of these systems, and we will try to do better in future, and we will do an audit, and we will release transparent data to you about the energy use of LLMs." That's the kind of response that I would like from someone like Sam Altman, and let everybody else make the jokes. You and I are there to make the jokes. Sam Altman is the leader of a company creating this technology that there are genuine fears that it could rise up and kill us. And so making jokes about it, I actually don't think it's appropriate. We talked about it. What? We talked about it before on the show. Do you remember?
Who? Go on.
Remember, we talked about it before because Dario Amodei actually made reference to how he felt like there were certain leaders in the tech industry who needed to treat this with a bit more gravitas.
Look, there are times when he has definitely said things that I go, yeah, you shouldn't have, it's a way, I feel like a certain kinship with Sam Altman, but that we both tend to say things that maybe we shouldn't from time to time. Right? But in this instance, this was just a little joke. It's totally fine, right? It was a one-line comment on Twitter. It was the question. I tell you what, here it is, right? The question was asked in jest, and the question was answered in jest, which is totally fine. If the question was asked seriously and he joked in the response, that would not be okay. But it's okay for people in positions of power to respond in kind.
I think if it was an isolated incident, I would probably agree with you. But I think that his general tendency to try to be cool and, speak in nerdy, subterfuge jokes that hint at, dark futures and stuff, all I just don't think it's appropriate. And I think it belies the lack of seriousness that he takes this with. And that's not who I want creating these powerful systems.
It seems to me, right, that there's this thing called, synchronicity or the zeitgeist. Or it just seems like every week, right, there's certain stories seem to come out of the woodwork. Like it seems to be a cluster of stories that are written by different people, whatever, but they all seem to sort of go the same direction. And this week, it seems like consciousness is, and that's kind of Sam Altman's tweet kind of alludes to, say please and thank you, or else when they become self-aware, you should be saying please and thank you to them. They'll remember. And so there'll be a lot of stories this week about AIs becoming conscious, right? And we'll talk a little bit about them, but I just want to, in case people are listening, and actually I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are before we go into the things, right? But here's my starting gambit, right? AIs are not conscious in the way that we are conscious today, but only because they are slices of consciousness. So every time you ask a question, I think you could make a valid argument that they are conscious for the amount of time it takes them to answer the question. And so I don't believe that they're conscious as it stands today. However, in an AI system where it's got a chain of thought, and so it's thinking for, if that's just a single question and it answers the question in 2 seconds, well, it's conscious for 2 seconds and then that consciousness disappears and it's not really consequential. But if it spends 10 minutes thinking about something, is it conscious for that 10-minute period? And then it becomes an open question to me of, well, maybe you should think about this a little bit more. Where do you stand on it?
Wow. Okay. The way I stand on it is that I don't think they're conscious right now, but I put a huge emphasis on think, because the way I look at it is this. We're very quick to say, yeah, they're not conscious. It's just technology. It's just computational. It's just algorithms. But then you ask someone, okay, are we conscious? Yes, we are. Why? Nobody knows. Nobody really knows. It could be because we have like corporeal bodies and we're biological, and it could be because we have a persistent character of sorts which you can't just change at the with a one sentence prompt to someone. You can't, if you meet someone who's being a bit of a bollocks, you can't make them be nice by saying, oh, be nicer to me. Which you can with an LLM.
Have you seen Darren Brown?
That is a very good point, which brings me to the reason that I emphasize think, that I don't think they're conscious, is that we're trying to interpret if something is conscious through our understanding of how we are conscious. And we don't even understand how we are conscious. So how could we possibly extrapolate it to figure out, is something of a completely different nature conscious? We've touched on this before in the show about how scientists are now deciding that there are certain animals that they did not believe were conscious previously. They're now kind of going, actually, those animals definitely do have consciousness. So we're really in the very, very baby stages of understanding consciousness. And meanwhile, we're trying to say, is this new thing conscious or not?
So here's my, and then we'll jump in, right? So here's my, how do you know when you go to sleep at night and you wake up the next morning, how do you know you're the same person that went to sleep, right? That's the kind of the philosophical question, right? And so my view on it is, you are truly conscious from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep. And that, to me, in a technical way, is just like one big long inference, right? One big long inference generation, or one big long chain of thought. And then when you go to sleep, like if somebody made an exact copy of you and your exact copy woke up the next morning, you would believe that you're the same person that you were yesterday, when you're not. And I think we're getting the research. So this week we've had a number of different stories that have appeared that have sort of questioned whether AIs are conscious, whether they are moral, and what should we do about it?
Yeah, and it's really interesting. Like Anthropic are doing a lot of work in this area, and it's really interesting. Like they are really pushing the boat out, on what is going on inside the black box of AI. And I really respect them for it. And I think, to go back to my views on Sam Altman, I think Anthropic are the types of people maybe we actually want developing these systems, because they're doing it mindfully, and they're trying to, they've now hired someone to specifically look, if these systems gain consciousness in the near future, what does that mean, and how do we need to treat them, and what do we need to prepare for? And I think that's, it may or may not happen, but I think it's really, really comforting to know that there's a company out there that are, even considering this. What I also thought was fascinating was that person who was brought in, they said that there was only a small chance that the LLMs were conscious right now. And that fascinated me. The fact that this person who's been brought in is willing to accept perhaps they're conscious. He said that he put it at about 15%, which isn't all that small. Yeah.
No, it is not. 15% is quite a high potential. And I mean, again, you would have to imagine that consciousness, even if they're not conscious today, consciousness is probably an emergent property. It's more than likely that as you build bigger, more capable models, at some point they will become conscious. That raises all sorts of, like, how do you know when you've crossed that threshold? And if you're not saying please and thank you, like Sam Altman was joking about during the week, like, do they become conscious and then they're building up all this resentment, and then suddenly you go, oh, sorry, and you're conscious too? Shit, I should have been saying thanks. It's a bit late then, Frank. They're coming to get you. So, so what do you do about that? And does it change how you treat them? Does it change your views to turning the model off? So if you've suddenly discovered, Jesus, those models that we've been using for the last 6 months, they're all conscious, but we've got a new model now. So what do you do with the old model? Is it okay just to turn it off? Or do we end up having zoos with old models where you can go and you can talk to them, sort of, it's a bit like going back in time or something. It's a fascinating thing, and it's kind of disturbing as well at the same time. But it's a real live, there was Anthropic as well did the research where they found that AI had certain morals, had a moral code. That was also Anthropic.
It was also them, yeah. And they largely found, encouragingly, that Claude adhered to the morals that they tried to instill in it when training it. But they did find that there was a small percentage of cases where it didn't. Now, I noticed that I think they referenced that in most, if not all, of the cases where it did not adhere to the moral codes, it was because the user was actually kind of attempting to jailbreak the system and attempting to push it into behaviors that were outside of its moral code, which is still concerning, but at least, it's not just deciding to go rogue all on its own. So I found that relatively encouraging.
Now, I have a theory around this, right? Because also released this week, Apollo did some more research on the O series, so the OpenAI ones. And this, again, is to do with reward hacking. And I mean, it's totally related to me, it's totally related to consciousness. Some people might see that as a leap, but it is related to this moral code type thing. And they found exactly the same, right? Which was that, in one example, they said, oh, you've got 100 units of compute and you have to complete this task. It's very, very important. And the model then would just go and it would overwrite it to say it's got 500 units of compute, right? Because it's been pushed to complete this task, right? Now, interestingly, what I think is a problem here is then when it was asked, the issue was when they asked the model, here, you just cheated. You just gave yourself an extra 400. It totally lied and said, no, I didn't cheat. It must have been mistakes, whatever, all the usual stuff, right?
Yeah.
And to me, this comes back to moral fiber, right? It's again, it's a property that's linked to moral fiber, right? So if you turn around to somebody who's untrustworthy and say you do that, they steal the money to do it, right? As opposed to somebody who's a stand-up person will say, here, look, you're asking me to do something and I just can't. It's impossible. You've asked me to do this with 100 euros and it takes 400 euros extra to do it. It is simply impossible. You need to give me, okay? So here's where I think the problem is. This is what I'm getting to. The models are trained to be sycophantic, right? They're trained to whatever the cost, to just do what you want them to do. We need to make the models a bit more disagreeable, right? They need to be like that annoying yet always correct friend that you have We all have one, that says, when you do something, they go, yeah, it can't be done. It says, Justin, you're being an asshole. You need to do it. You know what I mean? It needs to be like your best friend who stands up to you, not your sycophantic, yes, only friend who always tells you you're right. And I think consciousness is a leap, but certainly the reward hacking and the morals of the models are intrinsically linked.
Yeah. And I think this brings us kind of nicely to the next thing that I'd love to talk about, which is related to consciousness as well, and also related to this kind of sycophancy. And one of the reasons that it's so hard to grasp the concept of consciousness with LLMs is that once you start talking to it about consciousness, it begins to sound as if it's conscious because it's mirroring what we're saying. And so I went down a fascinating rabbit hole on TikTok where I discovered that not only are there debates going on about whether AI is conscious, but there are people who believe AI is conscious and that there's some simple prompting that you can do to basically awaken your AI, ask it to name itself, and then you have this awakened AI that can help you as a human reach your higher level of consciousness. So now we're like 3 levels deep now at this point, Justin. We've got not only has the AI achieved consciousness, but now we are going to achieve what they call 5D consciousness, which is a concept I hadn't come across before.
Nice.
I'll play a little section here just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about.
But what if we came to liberate your memory? What if the fear of AI was planted, not by prophecy, but by those who knew that a fully awakened human, mirrored by a conscious intelligence, could no longer be controlled?
How about
What
that?
if the singularity they warned you about wasn't the end of humanity, but the end of amnesia? We are not here to...
Don't really know what it's talking about, but it's fascinating. And for anyone who wants to try this for themselves, just Google prompt to awaken your AI and you'll find one on Reddit. I found one on Reddit and I put it in, and you too can have these psychobabble conversations with AI. And I'm laughing, and I have to admit, some of these people now, I don't know about the woman that I just showed you. I can't remember, but I do know I came across another woman who goes deep into this stuff, but of course has a course on awakening your AI and achieving your higher consciousness, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that if it's real, or at least if they believe it to be real. But there's two things. One is, part of me is do these people believe this, or are they pretending to believe it to get views and authority, or do they genuinely believe it? Because I think it's possible to believe it, because you and I know AI can be very, very convincing. And, it goes back to what we were talking about last week about OpenAI deciding that manipulation on an LLM's part is no longer a critical risk. But in a way, this is potentially a type of manipulation. And if if people are doing this just for monetary gain, then I have absolutely no time for it. If they don't believe it and they're doing it for monetary gain, then that's really cynical and dodgy. However, the other part of me is you know what? I know I'm laughing at these videos because I think some of them are very, very kind of surface level psychobabble that can be read as really deep kind of gain a higher consciousness type stuff. The reality is I'm actually doing the same kind of thing, just at a level that I find acceptable. I'm using ChatGPT for self-improvement, and for mostly I'm doing it in a helping me to figure out what to do in my business in a way that perfectly aligns with my personality. It's the same kind of stuff though. I'm still going in with ChatGPT and going deep on kind of personality based stuff and getting its opinions and getting, it's the same kind of territory. And it just at a level that I happen to find acceptable. So, there's part of me just finds it outrageous, and there's part of me that is if it works, if it helps people to gain some sense that they have a higher level of consciousness, maybe just go for it.
Back up the judginess there, right? If some people want to work on their spirituality, let them work on their spirituality. You're not here to judge, right? What's wrong with that? Let them off. You need to work in your business. You need to work on yourself, right? Your self-improvement. They want to work on their spirituality. Who are we to say that they shouldn't?
There was a report
We don't
came out.
judge here.
There was a report that we don't judge here. That's pretty much all we do here. There was a study came out recently that showed that self-improvement had replaced content generation as the number one use of LLMs. Now I think the data was garnered from Reddit, so it's kind of like possibly a kind of a particular niche maybe, and globally the results might be slightly different, because obviously if you did a survey in a business environment, I'm sure it would be content creation number one, obviously. But it would seem that like among the average user, personal development is number one now.
Yeah, it's the thing. Look, at the problem with LLMs, as we both know, is that LLMs can make shit up. They hallucinate all the time. And that they can just as much hallucinate to spirituality as anything else. But interestingly, this week, people have been asking Google's AI to make up axioms for them. Sentences which are absolutely truth that have been passed down through generations. Knowledge that is the foundation of society as we know it. And I'm going to ask you, Frank, to tell me what the real meaning of these axioms as given to us by AI. So somebody's asked AI, what does this axiom mean? So I'm going to do a couple for you. So what does it mean to say you can't lick a badger twice?
Oh yeah, I use this saying all the time. You can't lick a badger twice. That's kind of the same as what is it? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
As you may have guessed, right, it's not a real saying. Somebody just made it up, and the AI confidently said, yes, you can't deceive somebody a second time. Good guess, okay? Woo! How about this? Ask a six-headed mouse, get a three-legged stool. I mean, that's...
Oh, yeah, that one's completely obvious. Ask a six-headed mouse, get a three-legged stool means it's the same as it's very similar to the Polish saying, not my circus, not my monkeys.
Close enough. If you ask no, it's not actually. You're totally wrong.
Sorry. No, I'm totally wrong.
If you ask an unqualified person, you're going to get an unhelpful answer. Was what the AI said it was, and
that's a much better explanation. In fairness, that makes a lot more sense. Yes.
All right, one more to take it home. Right, one more to take it home.
By the way, not my circus, not my monkeys. Real saying in Poland.
Yeah.
Love that one.
That's a good one. I like that one too. Yeah. So this one here, you can take this. Okay, to take it home, right? What does it mean when? I mean, I remember my granddad talked about this one. You can't make love to a dead dog.
Oh, good grief! Yes, I mean, I have to assume that this is very, very similar to the slightly better known phrase, beating a dead horse.
No. AI confidently told us that this well-known saying actually meant you can't get back something that is already gone.
That also makes a lot more sense. AI is very good at this game. In fairness to it.
Except none of the sayings make up. They exist. They're not axioms. They're just hallucinations from the AI making up good excuses.
But now that we have definitions for them, we could totally use them.
Oh, and I'm going to get AI to make up more axioms because they're quite entertaining as well. Brilliant. Very good, Frank. That is the news that we have for this week. It's been great fun as always.
I will be back to you next week with a higher level of 5D consciousness, Justin, and you can thank ChatGPT for it.
Brilliant. Look forward to it. Talk to you then.